Welcome to the future of money. Come with us on this journey into the world of Bitcoin, blockchain and crypto projects. You're going to meet the trailblazers. These people have changed my life and they may very well do the same for you. Welcome back, Hard Forkers. We've got a very special guest today, Ed Thomson. Welcome, sir. Stefano, the most famous kitchen in all of crypto once again. Welcome back, sir.
Hello, thank you.
Now, most of you have clicked on this because you saw Polkadot in the title, the project that's jumped straight in at number 7. Currently pumping, I think, what is it, up about 20% in the last 24 hours. Now, you're going to be talking to somebody who knows a lot about that project. So, Ed, do you want to give us a bit of a background on who you are?
Yeah, I mean, like I've done various things, I guess. It's a bit of a strange background originally, shall we say, in physics, and then through finance, through security, and then eventually working at the Web3 Foundation in Switzerland. And so, yeah, I've just been following, what was originally cryptocurrencies, and then I guess we now call it more blockchain. Now we maybe call it Web3. Following up for a number of years, mostly just privately by myself, just hiding in my bedroom, reading about these crazy kind of blockchains and darknet markets and all this sort of thing. And I think kind of like a lot of people probably watching who grew up with things like Napster or probably BitTorrent or whatever. I think there's some fascination to these decentralized networks and the fact that they can't be taken down, or at least they're very hard to take down if they're truly decentralized. And I think you could say this is kind of like part of the vision of Web3. If you can imagine a web where there's websites, of course, and the websites can't be so easily taken down. Now, of course, that could be used for bad purposes, but also could be used for good purposes. So I think that as an idea speaks to a lot of people. Who, especially in our generation, who grew up with things like Napster. We know that Napster was taken down; it was maybe more centralized, but we've seen that BitTorrent has been harder to take down, and I think that's part of the appeal. Now, obviously, I know that whenever you attach a coin to something, that people often get really excited and get really wild, and it looks like if number goes up in Bitcoin, then people pile in or whatever else. So I know that there's an attraction there. There's only so much I can really say there, probably not much, but I can talk more about the tech right now. And so if you understand Bitcoin already, it's kind of like a digital gold of sorts. Originally, I think, at least in my mind, it was meant to be cash, digital P2P cash. It's there in the title of the white paper, but I know it's going to become more like gold rather than digital cash. But whatever, it doesn't really matter. And then we had Ethereum, which I think was a natural evolution in terms of being, you have, the ability to compute something, so smart contracts, and you compute this across the network, and that everyone is computing basically the same thing.
Yep.
And that's great. And I think really Ethereum has advanced the ecosystem a lot, the ecosystem being all of the blockchain ecosystem or all of Web3, if you want to call it that. And for me, those were the two major projects up until kind of Polkadot has now just come along. And then for me, Polkadot was the next obvious thing in terms of the technology. So I saw Gavin present in London back in 2017. And this was one of the very first times he'd presented in public about Polkadot. And some of it went right over my head. I mean, it was just, talking about validators and fishermen and whatever else. But back then it might as well been Chinese. I had no idea. And so, I thought hey, I understood enough to know that this is going to be the next big thing, as I saw it, right? This is the next big piece of technology in the blockchain industry. And so then I started to get involved. I started blogging and getting into the chat channels, asking lots of questions of the team back then, and then I knew so much that I could start answering questions, and that's kind of where I got into Polkadot as this community member, and then eventually I became an employee at the Web3 Foundation in Zug in Switzerland, partly from being an enthusiastic member. And so I joined. I guess the official start date was 1st of March 2018, although I'd been kind of lurking around a bit longer, and so that kind of gets us to where we are. And now, obviously, there's lots of cool projects around. It's not just Polkadot or not just Ethereum, but I'm not going to say bad things about the other projects, but at least certainly Bitcoin and Ethereum were the two biggest and still are. And Polkadot's kind of coming along now. And in my mind, it's the next thing. I'm saying it's the next obvious thing in terms of technology. even compared to a lot of other good projects which are out there, this in my mind is obviously kind of why I joined.
Well, on that note, when you say could really be the next big thing, what exactly is Polkadot?
Yeah, so I kind of butchered that question if you asked me that. So let's think about what is Polkadot. Polkadot is a platform. It's not just one blockchain, but it will be many blockchains. Right now we have one blockchain, which is the relay chain, which is kind of like, if you know Ethereum 2.0, or if you're somewhat familiar with Ethereum 2.0, you'll know of a beacon chain, which they use as like their heartbeat, whatever. We have the relay chain, which not exactly the same, but similar. And if you imagine that each of the blockchains connected to this relay chain can be completely different. They are like shards. So this is kind of getting with the Ethereum 2.0 kind of lingo and the sharding paradigm. So each blockchain is a shard, and each shard can be different. So you might have like a stablecoin shard, or you might have like a gaming shard, or you might have like DeFi as something completely separate, or you might have like an identity shard. So we used to call it, like the lingo that we used was parachain. We still do use parachain. If we're maybe talking to the public, then maybe we tend to call it more shard because we feel that that's a more familiar term. But if I ever use parachain, I mean shard. A parachain, again, it's just a blockchain. The name kind of came around from being a parallel chain. So a parallel blockchain to the relay chain. So you kind of look at it as like the relay chain is a layer one chain, and then all of the blockchains next to it are also layer one. They're like this kind of like base layer. So if you have, say, a gaming chain, for example, that will be connected into Polkadot, and it will be ideally focused only on games. And it will be designed in such a way that the actual, the actual software of the chain, we call it the runtime. I don't know how technical I get there for your audience, but the runtime can be tailored in a way to make certain calculations more optimized. And if you have a runtime for gaming, then you're basically saying that the calculations on that chain will be like faster or cheaper for particular operations specific to gaming.
Yep.
It might be, I don't know, like maybe you want some sort of like special signature, like a multi-sig, but done in a particular certain way, like a BLS, people talk about that. And, you know, you might not have that on every shard on Polkadot, because it doesn't necessarily make sense to replicate all of the functionality across every single shard. It's better to have, as we see it, sort of dedicated chains for fairly dedicated purposes. And it means that not everyone's hammering.
Just for the audience, by the way, we're actually doing a second interview with Ed and Stefano, specifically on blockchain gaming. That'll be posted tomorrow. So make sure you check that one out. I know you're heavily involved in that space, Ed. I'm really looking forward to covering that with you. And I know Stefano is full gaming geek. He's looking forward to that chat.
Yes.
Games are cool. Can't say anything else about that.
So Polkadot, is it, so really we're looking at a rival to Ethereum? Is that the case?
I mean, for some people, yeah. I get myself in hot water here probably if I say that it is. I don't want too many angry comments to me on Twitter. I mean, it's one of these kind of touchy topics, is that Ethereum is great in so many ways. Ethereum 2.0 has been delayed, so Polkadot is like a natural place to go. That said, there is something of a learning curve for you to get going. Yep. So it's not like I can say, hey, it's really easy to get started now, and it's going to be like, super easy, and like you can just totally port your stuff from Ethereum 2.0, from Ethereum.
What are those challenges for Polkadot to potentially become the new Ethereum? And do you feel the team tracking to potentially achieve that? I mean, where is it sort of at, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, like, so it's like if you want to create your own chain, it's definitely harder than creating your own smart contract. Smart contracts you can create fairly quickly. Now, compared to say 5 years ago when Ethereum launched, there's many more templates. There's many more like industry like standards lists of like best practices, things to watch out for. So you can easily find a good tutorial and get started on creating a dApp using smart contracts in Ethereum pretty quickly. For Polkadot, we're not there yet. One, with like our documentation and everything, like we will get there. But Ethereum has a pretty mature ecosystem to that extent already. So that's like one thing where like we know that we're just getting started, and so it's a little bit trickier to offer the same volume of information that Ethereum has. So that's kind of like one hurdle. The second hurdle is it is just fundamentally more difficult to create a chain than it is to create a smart contract. There's a lot more design thinking that goes into it. You have to be much more careful because obviously there's bigger implications. If you design your chain badly, you affect everything that runs on it. Whereas if you design a smart contract badly, in theory, that's isolated from every other smart contract.
Yep. So I mean, Polkadot's not functional yet, is it? I mean, as for example, smart contracts you're talking about. I mean,
so we have
that all happen.
Exactly. So we have, we have the relay chain up already. We now have like a testnet up for testing these parachains. And what you can also do is you can create your own chain right now, and you can create one that has smart contracts. We have two options. We have two flavors of smart contract chain or smart contract modules, if you want to call it that. You can do an EVM chain, so you can do an Ethereum-like chain which runs Solidity, or you can do a separate one which runs a language called Ink that has been developed at Parity. And it's basically, Ink is like a particular kind of flavor of Rust, shall we say, and Rust is the language that's been used to create Polkadot. There's lots of good things about that, but so that's like the two kind of like options that you have for creating your own smart contract chain. Now there are teams working on this. So one team is called Moonbeam. Moonbeam are working on an EVM chain, and the hope is that they'll be able to connect to their chain that they're building right now to Polkadot as a parachain. Therefore, we can offer EVM capabilities inside or on top of the Polkadot platform, however you want to call it. So people can run Solidity smart contracts within a parachain of Polkadot. Okay. The relay chain itself is pretty simple, so they don't run on that. It's just, it's got to be in one of the shards.
Right. Stefano, have you got any questions at this point for Ed?
Yeah, just one. So if you have like multiple chain, I'm obviously like taking the parallel with Ethereum. If we're taking like one single chain, like the main one, the same way that we have like the main one on Ethereum right now, in terms of like the scalability, like the general, obviously like everybody's like going crazy with the gas price right now, and we spoke in private about that as well. Like that, I don't know anybody that is not going nuts on that. How is every single chain of Polkadot compared to a single chain on what is going to be Ethereum 2.0 at that point?
Yeah, not sure I have the answer for that. I mean, I have some understanding of Ethereum 2.0, but I guess I don't know enough of like how it's going to be with their gas costs or whatever else. In theory, the scalability of both should be good. I've seen Gav talk about pushing, in one tweet he had like 200,000 TPS on Polkadot, and in another he said approaching like 1 million TPS. I don't know for sure like what the raw numbers are going to be. What's attractive with Polkadot is that if you're creating your own chain, or maybe you're teaming up with some buddies to create a chain, is that you can actually get rid of gas costs entirely. So you can have a zero gas cost. Now, obviously, gas is like useful as spam prevention or protection, whatever you want to say. And so it doesn't necessarily make sense to completely remove gas costs. If you have like smart contracts, which is Turing complete, something completely generic, general, you can do whatever you want, then you probably do want gas as a way to say like, we can't let you have like an infinite loop. But if you have something which is not so general but more specific, then you could quite reasonably remove gas costs entirely and say, okay, we'll bring in like another sort of rate limiting mechanism. Like maybe you can execute something every 6 seconds or every second or every 10 seconds or whatever. So certain functions will be limited to how fast you can spam them because you just don't want people to spam. And so that's kind of like another way of looking at it. Now with Ethereum 2.0, I don't know that they're going to remove gas on any of their shards, because as I'm thinking through this, it's kind of like an upgraded version of what we have now in Ethereum, that you have this general Turing completeness such that you can run any smart contract, which makes sense. And I think that is a good use case. But it does mean that you've got like, say, like 1,024 shards, which are all more or less the same, which again, it's fine. And I think there are use cases where that makes sense. It is much faster to get going with a smart contract. And so until Polkadot has smart contracts, and obviously people are like, okay, let's stick with it, or let's try to look towards Ethereum 2.0 because we know that we can build a smart contract really quickly and we can deploy that really quickly. Whereas, creating a compare chain might be, really hard. But then as more and more chains come online, a lot of the groundwork will be done for you. And so you won't have to create your own chain. Someone else will have done it for you, perhaps. Whether that's like, I don't know, for what you're doing, something like an Aragon chain or a DAO chain or whatever, we expect teams to come along and to build that at some point. Or smart contract.
What are going to be the requirement to actually let's say is that something for big companies, or can me, my little bedroom or kitchen set up a chain on Polkadot? What is going to be the process for that?
So we've had a lot of questions about that, and for a while, our messaging maybe wasn't so clear. So I think if you're a big company or you're well funded, well backed, then of course it's much easier. I think it is still possible for a small team to do it, but you have to kind of look to be raising. Now, that said, this is kind of the some ways a nice point, which means that it is possible, is that one of the big things is getting a deposit for Polkadot. Now, the reason that we have a deposit is kind of like this sort of spam protection. So Polkadot has what we call shared security, where each of the shards all run through the same set of validators. It's proof of stake. And so there's a common set of validators, meaning that you don't have to find your own miners for your chain. Because in the old days, people would have to create their own chain. They would copy Bitcoin or whatever, fork it. And then they'd have to go and find their own miners, which generally wasn't so good. Basically you'd always have a chain which was under secure. Whereas now we're saying, okay, hey, there's already a bunch of security around from these validators, but it's not free. You have to have some way of basically indicating, showing that you're going to be behaving, that you're not going to mess up. And so either you can pay per go, so you can create a chain and then you pay as you use it. And so that would be perhaps the easiest way to connect to Polkadot without raising big funds. Or if you can raise the deposit, then you can basically put down the deposit as your security guarantee to say, hey, if we misbehave, then you can slash our deposit. And that's for the whole chain. So if anyone kind of misbehaves in the chain. But the good thing, so the deposit, you might say, okay, what's the deposit? I don't know. It's going to be a big number, perhaps. It's going to be market determined. So if the market is quiet, then the deposit could be really cheap. Then, of course, if the market is going great in terms of everyone wants a parachain slot, which is what we call them, then the deposit could be quite high. Now, you as a team, you have to kind of get people to trust you with the deposit to an extent, because they don't want to get slashed. But at the same time, the deposits are actually, what's the word? Attributable. Yeah, I should be able to speak English probably, right? So the deposits are attributable.
Stick with that.
I know. And so basically, if I put in a deposit for the Stefano chain, then everyone knows that I put the deposit in, which means that if at some point I want to take my deposit back, I can do that because it's not like a big melting pot like we had with ICOs, where you threw your money into a big ICO pot and maybe you got some ERC20s, but your Ether was essentially lost. I mean, the team would get it and they could spend it however they want. Whereas with the deposit, you don't get my dots. All you get is my guarantee, my backing in the deposit, such that you can actually get your slot. I don't remember all the tiny details there of I would probably have to lock up my tokens for some amount of time. I can't just deposit them and take them back willy-nilly. Obviously, there's some rules upon bonding periods and everything else, because obviously it is something of a security guarantee. So you can't have all the deposits come in one day and then come out the next day, because that would just mess things up. But I think that two options there of pay as you go, meaning you can be a small team and just pay as you want to use the shared security, or you put down a bigger deposit, but then the big deposit you don't have to have from your own pocket, because you can also rally the community and ask them to help you out to raise a big deposit. Or if the market's quiet, then maybe the deposit isn't so big. So it's kind of two options there to get connected into Polkadot. The other option is, which is maybe less obvious here, is there's also the Kusama chain, which is basically really similar to Polkadot. It has some different parameters. It's kind of faster, shall we say, in the sense of like the unbonding and bonding times are much quicker. I don't think the actual block time is any different though. And it's something of an experimental network. It was how the Polkadot code base stood in August last year. So that's August 2019. We launched what was the Polkadot code base and said, okay, here's a new network. It's Kusama. And now we launched Polkadot this year with the actual real Polkadot code base as it stood there back in May, and that's Polkadot. But the expectation is that Kusama will probably always be a cheaper place to launch, meaning that you can still launch your product, still be able to actually have something which is decentralized, and do your thing with basically something which is really kind of like Polkadot, but isn't the Polkadot network. Now, you might say, okay, but if I'm on that network, will I be stuck? Now, we don't think you're going to be stuck. We think that there's going to be the possibility for multiple Polkadots to be connected together in the future. This hierarchical structure of many Polkadots is something on the roadmap. Now, obviously, it's not here yet. The parachains aren't here yet, but sort of this is like a vision for, shall we say, Polkadot 2.0, which is probably it's going to be a couple of years away, but at least it's on the roadmap. And there's probably other ways to achieve a similar kind of outcome. So I think there's many options for devs, for dApp devs, is that you can either create your own chain, raise a deposit, or pay as you go, or you find someone else who's done a chain which does enough of what you want to do, and then run with them. And that takes away some amount of hassle, of course. Now, of course, if you create your own chain, then you have the power to choose how it's designed. You can say, do I want it to be, for gaming or not, or you want to have a certain piece of cryptography or not, or you want to have high gas fees or low gas fees or no gas fees or whatever else. So whenever you create your own chain, you really have that power in order to design it.
Okay. Stefano?
So on that side, because obviously I need to put the mock on the Ethereum part of that. As you know, every single time that Ethereum point out a roadmap or a timeline, they always fail to put it out on time. Let's put it like that. How is going on the Polkadot side? Because obviously you have a little bit of internal knowledge on that. I don't know if you can share that or not, but would you say that normally things are done in the timeline? They're always delayed because obviously blockchain is new tech and it's super complicated. How is that thing also in relation on the fact that would help to understand what is going to happen in 6 months, 12 months from now, a couple of years, and so on?
Sure. No, I mean, I think deadlines are often missed. It is blockchain tech. It is new technology. It is, pretty complicated. I mean, this is kind of Polkadot in some ways is the first of its kind. But at the same time, it has launched, and it was delayed by what did we say? I think we originally said Q3 2019, and then we launched Q2 2020 as a basic version. So yeah, a little bit behind, but not super delayed. We are doing parachain testing now. I think it should be online before the end of the year with parachains. That's my hope. As always, everything can slip, but I'm at least hopeful that we're going to have something reasonable by the end of the year. That's my hope. I have some inside knowledge, but at the same time, things changed a lot and things often slipped. And at the same time, when you're really heads down within your part of the business, you don't always see what's going on to the side of you. So someone might be screaming at me now, when they're watching this video, oh, we promised this month or that month or this year or that year. And I don't remember. I know that there is progress. I know that things are happening. From my perspective, I'm not a dApp dev, so I'm not super worried. I don't have any deadlines to meet, and I don't have Ethereum gas fees to compete with. So for me, it kind of gets here when it gets here, and I know the team are working hard to do that. And yeah, I am confident that the team are building as fast as they can. And a lot of comments that we hear is that parity builds really fast. But at the same time, if you're doing something so completely new, even if you are fast or the fastest, it's still going to take time because it's so new, so complicated, so cutting edge that it's kind of unreasonable to expect it to be, like ahead of schedule. And if it slips, then it slips. But yeah, I mean, Ethereum, it's difficult for me to comment. I don't really know enough of like Ethereum in 2.0. It does seem like it does like slip and slip and slip. With Polkadot, we have some slippages, but at the same time we have just delivered. So I want to be more optimistic on Polkadot, and to that extent, maybe I'm incentivized to say that. I don't know. It'd be difficult for me to promise you that by this time next year that you can easily run all of your stuff. Like maybe you can. I know there are like obviously like you guys you want to be like, okay, how can we reduce gas fees like right now? And that's still a great question. And if you're running like Solidity smart contracts right now, you need to cut gas costs right now. Maybe right now, you just got to find some sort of like an XDAI or a Matic or something just to do like an L2 onto Ethereum just to get your costs right down as soon as you can. But then I was keeping an eye on to other projects like Polkadot or whatever, such that whenever they are ready, that you can always move across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that answer in a perfect way.
Oh, okay. I was going to say it probably wasn't the perfect answer. It's like
I guess
hey, it's a little bit of this and it's a little bit of that.
By being in, like obviously, I know that a lot of people would want to have like the specific answer, like the juicy thing and so on. But I understand that like obviously by working on something, problems happens. It's I think it's the same to everybody that is like deal with tech and with blockchain in general. So at least to me, it was clear as an answer. I have no idea about anybody else, and that's all right for me.
Most of the audience is screaming at their laptops. Well, what are these guys saying? Is the number going up or not?
No comment.
Okay. Yeah, you'll have to figure that one out for yourselves, people. Okay, so look, teething problems is what I'm hearing, but lots of promise. Stefano, yep. I mean, as a business user of Ethereum, what are your thoughts on Polkadot compared to Ethereum?
Well, to me, it's like one. It's obviously the point that like I need smart contracts. it really goes like to the ecosystem that Ethereum has in place with all the issues of the scalabilities, the gas price, and so on. As the fact that the user experience is a little bit more advanced than a lot of other solutions. The simple fact that like if you never touched blockchain before, you can have like a simple pop-up on a traditional website. Doesn't have to be a decentralized app, a Web3 app, and so on. So overall, where I'm seeing that is like you always need to have that eye on what is happening somewhere else. And, it seems that Polkadot has solved already a lot of the things that Ethereum is still trying to figure out at this point. I also love the fact that like of the option of not having the gas price in transactions. There are a lot of actions like that we could think about that probably don't require a gas transaction. Like what if we, for example, we start encrypting messages and things like that. If you start paying like 10, 15, 20 cents, nowadays $2 per every single message that you send on WhatsApp, you're probably going to end up like with a huge debt in your bank account. So, it expands the potential on use case to a level that right now Ethereum cannot even think about. On the other hand, it's cool because it's the future. But it's still missing that thing that like of the present at the moment. So I'm still stuck on Ethereum at the moment. In the good or in the bad, it doesn't really matter at this point because it seems to me that right now is still the only option that I have with layer 2s and all of that like things that are behind the ecosystem. But it's still the place right now to develop and to put out a product.
Yep. I mean, like I said, developing your own chain is a bit of work, and it's the right choice for many teams, but it's not the right choice for all teams. So if people are, really much more familiar with Solidity, for example, then something like an EVM compatible chain on Polkadot in the future, such as Moonbeam, might be the way to do it. I think there's a team in Japan. Well, I know there's a team in Japan called Plasm, and I know they've been working also in, on the one hand, scalability, so some sort of like native plasma contracts, essentially, baked into their chain, and at the same time also Solidity compatibility. So it's kind of there. These are like the two networks I have in my mind. There's probably more that want to create some sort of like EVM chain, and that, so you wouldn't have like the power to control the chain yourself, but at least you'll have something where you can say, okay, I could actually deploy it upon a different chain, and actually be able to say, okay, well, the gas fees are cheaper over here, so I'm going to deploy here, or it's cheaper over there, so I'll deploy over there. And that at least gives you like the power to say, okay, I don't want to pay the gas fees on Ethereum, but I would choose something else which is EVM compatible. Now, of course, you might say, okay, but if I'm on Polkadot, am I completely like separated from Ethereum? Am I completely stuck? Well, maybe in the very beginning you will be, but the thing is, we're working on a bridge. Should be fully trustless. That project is more or less just started. It was a grant. I don't recall it. I don't think we've actually said much about that publicly. So I probably can't say too much, but it's going to be a trustless bridge. There's a team working on it.
No,
it's a team outside of.
We want to have all these sides.
Yeah, I know. It's a team outside of Parity and outside of Web3, and they wrote like a really comprehensive like vision of what they were trying to do. They wrote really like well about the details of how it should work, and then our guys vetted it, saying, okay, this sounds like a sensible plan. So that means at least you'll be able to connect Ethereum as it is right now to Polkadot in the future, and it means that Polkadot in itself is not like an island kind of. This is kind of, in some ways, I guess this is the main point of Polkadot, which I guess I could have mentioned before, not just the fact that we're this great, crazy platform of all these different chains, but the bridging aspect is what Polkadot's probably the most famous for. I probably should have mentioned that. But anyhow, people get to know about it now. We want to be able to connect to Bitcoin in a mostly trustless way. It's not going to be perfectly trustless, but close enough. Ethereum should be trustless because of the way we can have the guarantees. But then also those are like the two main like chains that we're going to target, but like there'll be a whole bunch of other chains which will be worth targeting that people should come along and develop bridges for. So if you say you develop something for like a Polkadot parachain or a shard, whatever, you deploy it, and for some reason you want to talk to Ethereum to get something from it, then there should be a way to do that. And so this is kind of how I'm looking at the bridge, that there should be a way to get data from Ethereum to Polkadot or from Polkadot to Ethereum, like either way. And it can be arbitrary. It doesn't have to be like a token balance. So that's one of the things, obviously, people think about when they think about interoperability. They think about how do we move like money back and forth. But the bigger picture of interoperability is actually being able to send like any piece of data back and forth, which could be an NFT or it could be just some message, something, some sort of call. And I think there could be some really interesting, juicy things there in the future. Like maybe there's a way to like, call a smart contract from Polkadot, like a smart contract on Ethereum. And so maybe you could do something kind of interesting where you have something kind of deployed on Ethereum already, but maybe there's also a way to interact with it through Polkadot, through a smart contract, which is now running on one of the Polkadot parachains. And so you could have like this cross-platform, cross-chain interoperability and this interaction, which I think is, it's possible. We're probably some time away. Maybe it's this time next year, but we will get there. And I think that's a really kind of like interesting future. And I think that was kind of like, when I think back to this conversation, or rather this presentation by Gav in 2017, that was like the big thing which really hit it for me. It's like, oh yeah, like we really do need this like way to connect chains together. People will want to move data from one to the other and do it in a it should be trustless, but at least as close to trustless as we can get. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, like I totally agree on the need of doing that. Actually, like on that note, like another question that I have that is obviously like it goes on that topic. So today I was trying to sell the token that I got like back in the ICO period for free and so on. So I was like liquidating that. I tried to use a DEX from a very famous company, but I don't want to name the company because I got a very bad experience. So I don't want to be rude in the specific example. Anyway, when I was trying to like trade this ERC20 token, which stays as an ERC20 token, this specific DEX asked me to create a specific type of a wallet that lies on another chain that they have developed, and they wrap that token. So even if I had the token that was an ERC20 and they were showing the pair, in reality, I was not able to like transfer that in and out. So obviously, like it was a bad experience. It should not happen. I completely agree on the side that like chains should allows you to like just go in like one way, and obviously like from a user experience point of view. On that note, are you aware like of anything from like the UX point? Like I'm thinking about like a lot of the layers 2 on Ethereum that right now, if you want to jump on a layer 2, in 99% of the cases, you're either obliged of downloading a new wallet for that, or using and setting like a specific RPC on the wallet to change the network. Is there anything on Polkadot that can be like very versatile at the moment, or like any company that is developing something like that you're aware of?
Just trying to unpack that question in my head because there's a couple of things there.
Go for it.
So, I mean, the API interface that we have in Polkadot, if we can call it that, or within like Substrate. So Substrate is like the software framework that was used to create Polkadot. Basically, Substrate you can use to create any chain that you want. You could create Polkadot, or you could create a standalone EVM chain, or you could create a whole bunch of other chains. So we have this Substrate framework for creating blockchains, and within that there's an API, which I guess you want to call it like the API on the server side. It's within the actual chain itself, and you can make RPC calls to the chain, of course. Now the outside is you need some sort of like RPC client or API client, if you want to call it that, to make calls to the chain. Now, with a Substrate chain, is that each of the chains will have a fairly common API interface, such that if someone was to create a wallet for one particular parachain or one particular, I don't know, say the relay chain, I think there's enough commonality across each of the chains that a lot of the functionality should be the same. Now, of course, someone could maybe tweak it. They could add more calls, or maybe they could take some away. So that's making me think that if there is something, then potentially it could work across different chains. Now, I know that Parity have developed one of the API clients in JavaScript, TypeScript, whatever. And it's like you go to polkadot.js.org and you go into what we call the Polkadot.js app, which on the one hand is like a wallet. You don't store your keys there, but you can see your balances, and you can deploy smart contracts. There is like a place that you can go to. Like one of the options is like, hey, I want to look at my accounts, or I want to look at the latest chain data, or I want to look at like staking and go through the staking workflow, or I want to deploy a smart contract. So you can go in there and you can deploy smart contracts. And probably, I haven't really looked into it, you can probably start making like the calls to smart contracts. So if you want to call a smart contract, it's probably there as well. Now, the reason for saying this is that I'm guessing that which I kind of know that you can kind of use this Polkadot.js interface for talking to a lot of different Substrate chains. I know right now that you can go there and you can see live a bunch of different chains within the interface. There's like a little button which is like a switcher button, shall we say. You switch between like Polkadot, Kusama, maybe Edgeware, maybe Plasm, maybe Moonbeam. So you can switch between all these different chains and see your accounts for each of the different chains. And it's like one place to do all of that. So if a new parachain was to come online, then it should be relatively simple to connect that parachain to that UI and have like most of the same kind of functionality. Maybe like in some of the chains, like because they're a parachain, you won't have staking because it's a separate thing. But but that's fine. There should be enough like commonality across like the API that I'm pretty sure that that should be possible. Kind of partly from knowing that kind of is possible now. Does that solve your problem? Not entirely sure. Let me know if there's something else which I don't know. Is that roughly like what you're thinking?
Yeah, it does answer that. I still think that like with that approach, you're still like too in the back-end side on that. Like it's still like for the people that are kind of like dealing with the thing. While if I'm thinking about like we spoke about that solutions like Portis, for example, which are obviously done like for people like my grandmother. She can enter the blockchain because it's like this. That to me is like the real key on adoption to like bringing things like mainstream and so on. So it's good that obviously you have the option already to like interface with all of these different chain, but it still seems to me that it's only like for the people that are really capable of doing that. It's not like for the random Joe that never used that before.
Yeah, I mean that's true. Yeah, I mean like we don't have Portis, nor do we have a team like Portis or building a similar product that I recall at the moment. There's different wallet builders, and I know some have thought about building some sort of like DApp wallet or some sort of web wallet. Thought about, but I don't know that anyone's actually got around to building it. But you're right. I mean, in terms of having like this, you could have something like MetaMask, or you could even use MetaMask itself. But even that's not quite the same as like what Portis have, where they've got a pretty slick UI, and they do make it essentially, maybe not idiot proof, but at least it's much more familiar from like a Web 2.0 world, where if you log into Facebook, you have like one password and you have like an email address, and you're in and you're able to do whatever. But I think that'd be a good thing to have, and I think if someone builds that'd be great. If someone, someone could probably take what Parity have done and probably figure out a new way to skin that from this Polkadot GS app. A bit beyond me, but I'm sure someone could do it.
To anybody watching, the Web3 Foundation is giving grant to build on Polkadot. Yeah, you just got your first idea, so jump on it.
Yeah. That's true. Someone could do that, and I'm actually trying to think if someone pitched us that idea, because we had so many ideas pitched to us, and sometimes even good ideas don't get funded. But yeah, I don't remember actually. I would need to. Yeah, I don't remember.
Fair enough.
I think it'd be a good one for a grant for sure. Someone should dig in and try to figure that out.
I'll put the links below, people. I'll put the links below where people can go and apply for those grants.
Yeah, for the like final question on my side, obviously, as we enter like the grant side, how big are the grants?
So
I'll send you the links, Stefano.
Oh, just
there we go. I mean, like, so there's like so individual grants. So there's two limits that I have in mind. One is like there's a 30K limit. It's a soft cap, a soft limit, which was it was easy to approve those up to 30K, because we could have done that internally without like further approval. But we also have the option to go up to 100K. It takes a little bit longer, but it's not like impossible. It's not like super laborious. Of course, there's a number of criteria, like we want it to be open source, such that you can basically give it to the community. So if we're going to fund it, we don't want to fund like purely for-profit ventures. Of course, you can be a company and you can make money, but whatever you build for us should be like a community thing. Yeah. But generally, there's always a way that like you can create something which is open source and still make money from it. So that's like that was like the biggest, like the big two criteria. Keep it under 100K. Make sure it's open source, and then obviously make sure it's relevant to Polkadot. We had people like pitch ideas for other chains, and we're like, we just don't fund that. Or sometimes people would like, they would have created like a grant proposal for like another chain, and then like they basically like scratch out the name and then write Polkadot over the top, and it's like they clearly haven't like really read about Polkadot at all, because like they've written this as if though it's for another chain, and they've done like like copy and paste, like find Control F and like finding where they've had, I don't know, say it was Tezos or Cardano or something, and then they put like Polkadot instead, and it's like, yeah, okay, there's something wrong here.
I mean, I understand that, but if I may just break a shield on those people, because obviously we are on mainnet of Ethereum, but every single time that we get like that there is an article about like, hey, this blockchain is doing grant for whoever wants to migrate there, I have like either my investors or my team text me, and it's like, why don't we migrate there immediately? And I'm always like writing that email and be like, hey, I saw that you're giving grants for migration. We're in Ethereum. We don't really care, but like, if you give us some money.
True. No, it's true. I guess that's not unfair. It's just more like if someone writes like a proposal and it's pretty clear that they haven't read like the first thing about Polkadot, it sticks out, and it's like, we can fund migration, but we want people to come with a clue, because we want people to be able to actually develop the product. It's like, do you guys actually know like what you're getting in for? Is like, do you know if it's easy or if it's hard? And if people just like blanket in like an application, then they've got no idea what they're doing, and often those were just, they wouldn't lead to like a good outcome, because they would be just too like, it'd be just too difficult for them probably. If you at least have some clue, or you can show that you've read about it, or you have like some understanding, it's like, oh, okay, this guy's actually clued in and he wants to migrate because he's having problems with, I don't know, say Ethereum, then that is actually a pretty good story. That's like something that we can get on board with. That's something we can get interested in. Now, of course, like, we don't necessarily just pay for someone just to migrate. Now, you could say, well, does that pay for users? Does that pay for adoption? Kind of, yeah, but at the same time, like, it kind of, we need to see kind of like the relevance to like the community. Like, if we fund a team to kind of migrate, is it going to be used just by that team, or can it be used by a great number of teams? And of course, if we're going to prioritize teams, we want to prioritize the ones who are bringing in good tech that can be used by a lot of people, like a Portis wallet, because it can be used by so many that it's not just like us funding one team to do something really super obscure that no one's going to use.
Fair enough.
So, like, for example, like if someone was to figure out like an Aragon chain, whether it's the Aragon guys or whether it's someone else, that seems like a pretty obvious thing to fund, because lots of people want DAOs of some sort. Now, we might not be able to cover the entire cost, but,
Christian, if you're watching this, Aragon might actually port on Polkadot. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, there were some noises around that before, but I don't know what the latest is. I don't know what the Aragon guys are thinking. I'm not really so much in touch with them, but yeah, I mean, they should probably get back on the wagon and get developing for Polkadot.
And I think that on that, I don't have any other question, because it was a perfect closing.
Well, on that note, I know we're going to do part 2, which we'll be posting tomorrow for you people, which is on blockchain gaming specifically. So any questions you have, we'll would love to host you back on the channel in the coming weeks, Ed. It's been very, very informative. I hope everyone learns a bit there, and please send us your questions, and we'll maybe touch back with you for a follow-up in a week or two. Plenty of action at the moment, for sure.
Cool.
So on that note, everyone, I hope you've enjoyed listening in. You've learnt something, and tune in tomorrow if you are interested in blockchain gaming, and if you're not, tune in and check it out anyway. I don't
exactly
know about blockchain gaming, so I'm intrigued to learn something from these two very knowledgeable guys. That's happening tomorrow. So yeah, guys, thanks very much for this hour. I've just looked. Polkadot's gone up 1.5%, and while we've been talking.
It's the Edward effect. They know.
Yes.
Yes.
I actually put out a message a few days ago. I wasn't at my laptop. If somebody could pick me up and a little bit of Polkadot if they were buying any. It's gone up about 70% since then, and I didn't hear from anyone. So I assumed I was only going to hear if it went down. Yeah, I got you some of that.
I got a huge bag to give you a shot.
Oh, fantastic, Stefano. Fantastic. Listen, yeah, good questions. Thank you for joining, sir. Appreciate your time. And Ed, really appreciate. See you tomorrow for the blockchain gaming conversation.
Yeah.